A day has only 24 plus or minus 1 hour, and I have less than 10 minutes to speak about it. My name is Šedivý. I was born in Bratislava, Czechoslovakia, studied in Lyon in France, and now living in Karlsruhe in Germany. But I have spent actually my whole life in a single time zone, Central European time zone. If on a standard Python you want to get the current time, you can use datetime now, but this piece of code will return different datetime objects depending on which time zone your computer is set to. So if you are in Barcelona, Athens, or your computer is set to UTC, you will get different datetime objects, which is not very practical if you want to compare them. If you want to get the same datetime object on every computer, you can use datetime UTC now, but there is not information that you are in UTC, so you will have to know that implicitly and carry that information somewhere else. If you ask for datetime now with the parameter of datetime time zone UTC, you will get the current time in UTC with the information that you are in UTC. So this will be also formatted everywhere and transmitted and can be calculated with. But hey, we wanted to get the current time in Barcelona. We know that Barcelona is now 1 hour ahead of UTC, so we can create a virtual time zone that is defined as 1 hour ahead of UTC and then ask for the current time there. We will get 17:45 with the information that we are 1 hour ahead of UTC. But this is valid now, but not in summer, because in summer Barcelona still uses daylight saving time. For that, if you are in Python 3.9 or newer, you can use zone info, or you can backport it into older versions of Python, and then ask for the current time in Europe Madrid, which is now the time zone of the whole Spain, and it will give you the current information, the current time there, and with the information where are you located. So this will work during the whole year, whether you are in daylight saving time epoch or not. If you have an older version of Python, you can also use the dateutil library that works almost the same, or PyTZ, but there are some implementation details that are a little bit different, so you will have to pay attention when you implement using PyTZ. I absolutely recommend to switch to zone info or to use dateutil. This was Python, but where does the time come from? How do we measure it? Usually you could take the current time, like the summer, not summer, I mean the sun at noon, the current time, this will be noon, and then next noon, again 24 hours difference. But this doesn't work exactly like that, because there is something called time equation that defines that the sun's position at noon oscillates by plus or minus almost 15 minutes during a year. That's actually where the term of mean time comes from, because we calculate the mean, the average noon during the year, and then we can calculate with 24 hours. So every place in the world has their own local mean time, which worked perfectly well, because going from Barcelona to Madrid took you several days, so you didn't really mind whether there was a time difference of a few minutes. But with the railroad, it was important to have one coordinated time, because you didn't want to send 2 trains on the same track from 2 cities at the same time. So there was Greenwich, and then other countries just adopted the rules according to Greenwich, and at the end we had Greenwich and plus and minus 12 hours. So actually it's something like 25 time zones. But that's not true today, because today we have over 440 time zones. Here are they. Where do they come from? They are not defined by any international organization, that because there's always the single government that decides about the local time, or about daylight saving time offsets, or about the time zone in general. And you see that there are plenty of time zones even within several countries. This comes from the fact that in 1970 every country in the world received their own time zone, such as Europe Madrid, Europe Berlin, Europe Paris, and so on. And every region of every country, if there was some other concept of time zones or daylight saving time since 1970, then there was a new time zone created. For example, Spain since 1970 was consistent as a whole country, so there is only Europe Madrid now. There is also Ceuta and Canary Islands, but they are of course in different time zones. So this information comes from IANA.org, which is the organization that monitors the changes in daylight saving times and the time zones in general, and then publishes on their website two things. One is a mailing list, very active mailing list, where you can follow all the changes and where even you can write the changes if you know that there is some wrong information and there will be some upcoming change. And there is a file that is released several times per year. This year we had already 4 releases that contains all the information that is used for all programming languages, all database engines, all operating systems. All of them take the information from here. This file, for example, here that is almost 2 months old. There are files like some scripts, Perl Oak shell scripts, and the most interesting information are the files called Africa, Europe, North America, and so on. And you see, for example, Europe, 180 kilobytes. There is something in there. From all this data, I extracted the history of all time zones around the world in the past 130 years. So the x-axis are the years, and the y-axis 0 is Greenwich. To the top is to the east, so Asia, Australia. 0 is Europe, Africa, and -5 direction -10. This is America. And you see that at the beginning there was this mean time, so every time zone was a little bit local. And then it crystallized to 20, more or less 25 whole hour time zones or something in between. And the small ticks, you see this is daylight saving time. There are some bigger jumps that are some islands in the Pacific that just moved, skipped a whole day. And what you see, we are 2020, that most of these time zones, they just continue until 2038. So this means that if you have the current version of the TZ data and you use it in the future, and there is some change in the daylight saving time or time zone somewhere in the world, it will not be updated. So you will have to update it and keep it up to date. This is a detail on the 3 time zones in Spain, so Madrid, Ceuta, and Canary Islands. The green one is Madrid. So you see, until the World War II, Spain was in the West European time zone, so just like UK. But in 1940, Franco got inspired by Hitler and he moved the whole Spain to Central European time, where you remained until now. Actually, geographically, Spain belongs to Western European time zone, so you should just move back. So if you look into this file of Europe, you will find, for example, this snippet that will be automatically translated into PyTZ databases or for other programming languages, which is the information on Madrid. The current line, the last one, is the current. So now you are in the Central European time zone. That follows the rules of EU that we are going to have a look at later. But you see that at the beginning Madrid was at 14 minutes behind UTC, but this was only until 1900. That means that it was only Madrid. So if you want to get the local time in Barcelona or Bilbao or Malaga, you will have some other times. The whole region is valid only since 1970. It is not guaranteed that the local information is valid before 1970. There are information about Ceuta and Canary, and there is also the comment that actually the historical time in the Canaries is obscure. So if you have some information about the history of the Canary Islands time zones, just post them to the mailing list and update the information. So if you look at Madrid, now it uses the EU rules, and in EU rules the last 2 lines are valid. It means that at the last Sunday of March and the last Sunday of October we just switch to daylight saving time forward and back. And if you remember, before 1996 the daylight saving time lasted only until end of September, not until end of October. And there are other informations about 1939, for example, that there is no information about the daylight saving times or switches for those 2 or 3 weeks. So if you find some information about that, this data is waiting for you. These are extra rules for Spain since 1918 until 1978. And you see that every time a government says, oh, we are going to switch to daylight saving time 1 week later, or we are not going to switch at all, there is a new entry in this file that will have to be there and stay there forever. Spain is still okay. There are other countries in the world that have much wilder data and that switch or decide on switch or not switch even 1 or 2 weeks ahead. That is too late. You have to announce the switch or change in your data time zone information at least 1 year ahead. So a day has only 24 plus or minus 1 hour. Don't invent your own time zones. And don't hardcode any rules. Something like, oh, am I on the last Sunday of March or of October? No, there are libraries for that. And keep your time zone slips up to date, and follow your government's intentions to modify your time zone. And if you see somewhere, then inform tis.iana.org, and you will future me or somewhere else is going to speak about you in their talk on time zones. And if you can, avoid the time zones. Thank you very much.